Good day and welcome to the second special edition of Focus On, the Road to Women in Infrastructure Summit 2021. I'm your host, Zinati Guma. Now, the Road to Women in Infrastructure Summit 2021 is a live 4-hour webinar hosted by CNBC Africa in association with the Development Bank of Southern Africa on the 24th of August. I'm joined by Koffman, Group Executive for Project Preparation at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, to delve deeper into the role in women in infrastructure. Thank you so much for joining me, Catherine. Now, I spoke to your colleague Zodwa Mbele recently, and she actually said that, looking at the nature of infrastructure, it's very large scale. And it's not only the initial capex that's needed, that's, quite costly and quite daunting, especially for women entering into the space, but it's actually the preparatory work that goes into the project preparation. And that's where DBSA comes in, because you have infrastructure project preparation facilities. And I'd like to know what that entails and in which part of the process does DBSA come into?
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question. Yes, what project prep facilities really, what it entails is it's sort of bridge capital. So when you're planning and preparing projects just before it gets banked, there's a stage in which you must prepare it to get ready for bankability, and that is what Zodwa was referring to. That is a very risky time for the project in terms of planning and cost that you'll incur. And you come to the likes of the DBSA to get what we call project preparation funding. The final outcomes of that is that you are preparing a project to such a stage and of such a quality that it's ready to be banked. So it's ready to be banked by lending businesses, either within the DBSA or externally, commercial funders and development finance. And it's something that's investable from a private sector perspective as well. Our role specifically in that is we try to facilitate that final push of the bridge capital towards a bankable project in all types of infrastructure focused on social infrastructure or sustainable infrastructure.
And how long does this process typically take, this preparation process take, in order to get to a point where a project is seen as investable from the private sector?
That is such a difficult question. Timelines are always difficult. It depends on where the starting base is. So what is the environment like where you're starting from? It depends on how well that project has been defined by the owner of the project, which could be public sector or private sector. So have they got a clear scope around the project? What are the milestones that have to be reached through the project life cycle? It's not an easy question, and it does require the expertise both from the project prep specialist who's assisting the sponsor with preparing the project, as well as the sponsor's capacity. So it will take a little bit longer depending on the capacity, especially on obviously the sponsor side. Private sector tends to be a little bit more prepared, have done their own pre-feasibility. While public sector, we can start very, very, very early on in the process. So we would even develop infrastructure plans for certain municipalities and prepare those to a certain level where we prepare bankable feasibility studies, which is where my particular area within the DBSA is focused, where the project prep area is focused. And that can take some time because it's not only an internal process, but we've got external stakeholders involved in the process.
Indeed. And Catherine, what are the key factors here that drive good project preparation so that you do get to a point where your project is bankable?
Yes, so I think I've already mentioned the project must be well defined, the scope must be well defined. The project team that deals with it obviously has the right expertise, but is able to identify pretty early what is the risk involved? What is the risk matrix we must set? What is the scope we must set? And the scope must be very defined towards driving bankability. So it's not just about the input that we want out of this, but the final output, which is the project that's bankable. Your partners, I mentioned, is important. If your counterparty, for instance, is a state-owned entity, that the municipality gets the necessary approvals or resolutions from council. If it's a private party, that the private party has done their own sort of MVP, their minimal viable product test, that you have credible off-takers on the other side who will pay for the funding that will be dispersed into the project eventually, not project prep funding, but actual funding to deliver the piece of infrastructure, that the off-taker that will use that product or that asset will have the ability to pay for it. That's very, very important, that they're credit worthy. And of course, that the regulatory framework is comfortable, it's solid, it creates investor confidence when policy is certain.
Right. So some of those factors that you mentioned there was identifying the risks that you could bump into. And I'm just interested, what kind of bottlenecks have people experienced in this process? What are the usual bottlenecks that people usually experience? And also how DBSA is trying to get over these?
I think especially in trying times like this, usually these projects are off balance sheet. So the projects that you will not have, the project that's been prepared is not specifically to be funded on a balance sheet basis, but an off balance sheet basis. So it's funded from a shell company actually, and it's very highly leveraged. So it's a substantial amount of funding, debt funding goes into that. So in order for you to be comfortable with that scenario, the risk that we encounter is that you have to be very comfortable with the track record of the entity that's going to deliver the project. Considering we're in South Africa, on an African continent, where we are in a transformation space in terms of upskilling skills in the market, in terms of gaining that track record, it is always challenging to create bankability around that. But we've got different tools to get there. But track record is certainly one of the hindrances that we find. And so we like to encourage collaboration and partnerships to give that support for track record. If your off-taker is a government utility, the stresses of COVID, the capital that had to go in to deal with this emergency of the pandemic, it means that a lot of utilities and SOEs are cash, there's not enough cash in the system. So as an off-taker, they may be compromised to some extent. So developing projects that doesn't require guarantees or that doesn't require that much dependence on the off-taker is one of the risks that we try to mitigate. And I think another one is just the timelines it takes to get approvals. It delays development goals. And the longer project preparation drags on, the assumptions that you worked on initially on cost factors, macroeconomics, they can change. So a project that was a great idea today, 12 months later, if you've had a major shift and delays, obviously you need to relook at those issues, and that causes delays.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Catherine, just telling us where the DBSA comes into project in terms of the preparatory stage that is usually very costly, and walking us through the risks that are associated with that process and how the DBSA tries to help people to get their projects to a bankable position. That was Catherine Koffman, Group Executive for Project Preparation at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Remember to join us for the first virtual Women in Infrastructure Summit 2021 on the 24th of August from 1:30 to 5:30 p.m. Central African Time. You can register free of charge on the hopin.com platform under Women in Infrastructure Summit. From me, Zinati Guma, on this Focus On segment, it's goodbye for now.